go back because
All right, folks, well, let's go ahead and get started. You should have a packet. Everyone got a packet? We're going to go through the changes they made to the contracts, and then also talk a little bit about the transfer and recordation taxes changes coming up September 1 and radon coming up in October. So let's dive in here. The first form you got on your packet is the release agreement. So they've changed the formatting of the release agreement. There used to be initials over here by the buyer, seller, who gets what. Issues we were running into was we'd have everyone sign, everyone agree to, let's say, only B. If you select A, it basically means that we're releasing the contract, and option here we've come up with a agreeable way to deposit. Or B is we agree to release the deposit. I'm sorry, we agree to release the contract, but we don't have an agreement on releasing the deposit. And I've talked to GCAR counsel, and it's their recommendation that, I said, well, it's been our understanding that if you have this release signed by one party, and everyone agrees, one party agrees to release the contract, they want the deposit, the other party agrees to release the contract, but they want the deposit, that we have a mutual agreement on, okay, we're done with the contract, now it's up to dispute over the deposit. GCAR says, well, actually that's not really the case. What you need to do is go with B. Everyone needs to sign and go for B. Problem is most people don't want to hold it. It's typically the seller who is wanting to keep the deposit, and the buyer who wants to get it on their side. So it gets into the question, okay, you got a situation where seller wants to keep the deposit, buyer wants to keep the deposit. We're not going through with the contract, so can the seller put the home back on the market? The black and white answer from GCAR is no, not until you have B signed. However, I think it's one of those things, your client should probably seek legal counsel if they want to put their house back on the market and they don't have a signed release, because a lot of sellers do it. And it's an issue we run into a lot. And a lot of times on the buyer side, we're trying to get them out. There's a couple ways you can get your deposit to it. That's the easy way, right? And that's the way it happens 95% of the time. Option B is you wind up negotiating it out. The seller winds up trying to negotiate a little bit out of the buyer. Buyer just wants to be done with it. The third option is you basically go through mediation, which can be about $250 to $400 in mediation costs, and then it goes to interpleader, which is about $500 out of the deposit. So you could take out about $1,000 out of the deposit if you follow the contract for getting all the releases signed properly and getting the deposits dealt with. Then there's a fourth option. Yeah.
There's an exception. If we don't have to exercise it.
Right.
And it's expensive for the broker. And you do that, it often costs us, the brokers and the agents, money to go to interpleader. We just did that.
Yeah. It's just and it gets into a point where you've gone through mediation and the seller refuses to, they can't come to an agreement at that point. The only other option is to go to interpleader. It goes out of the deposit. So
supposedly, but we didn't get ours. The judge wouldn't allow ours to count this last time. So what happened was the attorney took the whole amount. We took it in 2 checks. But we were allowed to take $500 out of the interpleader, according to the contract. But the judge, they disregarded these things. I want the whole thing back in the court. He said, so we were just out our money. We had nothing. All we could do is spend more money going up after this ridiculous thing.
Right, but for your client's sake, keep in mind, it's going to be about, to take it through the way the contract is written, it could take them, it's about $750 to $1,000 that goes out of the deposit. So you got a $2,000 deposit. I mean, you're really only fighting over $1,000 at that point, if it goes all the way through. And then kind of the fourth option, which we've seen some buyers take. So there's times when sellers, just to be jerks, will sometimes hold on to the deposit. And you know, your clients should seek legal counsel if they're looking at doing any other options. But we've seen some buyers actually go after the sellers and file like a lis pendus against the sellers, which actually prevents the sellers from selling the property. So prior to the seller selling that property, the buyer potentially has some leverage back where they can they can force the seller to release the deposit by taking some legal action. And we've seen it play out a couple different ways. One where the buyer's taken it through mediation, having to wait 6 years and finally getting a judgment against the seller. And then we've seen some buyers actually go after the seller and get the deposit real quick. So if you get into one of these situations, please come and talk to us. We negotiate these things a lot and have some pretty good advice, I think, that can help your clients and kind of direct them in the right legal realms. Does that make sense? I'm kind of talking in code because, you know, again, don't want to get you guys in trouble legally, but there are some other options too out there. Yeah.
Have you ever considered automatic deposit?
No, because there's got to be due process. Because if you know, there's got to be some type of due process. So if someone broke, so if there was fraud involved in the case and someone truly felt that someone did something fraudulent, even if they were getting out on the HOA docs. Well, what if the HOA docs, you were getting out on the HOA docs and there was a dispute over, was it the 7th day on the condo or the 8th day? You know, and someone felt strongly one way or another. So they've gone away automatic release.
I think almost every dispute we have is sellers claiming that the purchaser didn't do the right thing with the mortgage loan or something like that.
Yeah.
And usually they're wrong.
Right.
You know, I mean, because we have to get a denial letter, you know, we don't accept it otherwise. I'm just saying that it's usually the sellers saying, I was inconvenienced, you're gonna pay me your deposit because my inconvenience, because you had this contract that you couldn't get your loan or whatever. So I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's 3 reasons why contracts fall apart. And I go over this a lot, so I'm a broken record. Home inspection, that's the easiest to get the deposit released because both parties actually have a say in it. Sellers get to say yes to something or no to something. Buyers get the same thing. So we usually have some type of mutual agreement at the end of the day that we can't come to a meeting of the minds. Condo HOA is the next level. Most people aren't getting out on condo HOA for the real reason, you know, unless they've got that white panel truck that can't go into Montgomery Village and they didn't know that. But it's state law. It's rarely do I ever see sellers fight that. The third thing that we always run up against is if there's a financing issue, buyers are denied financing, we never get the deposit back right away. There's always some suspicion. What did the buyer do to ruin their credit? What did the buyer not disclose to the lender? What did they do afterwards? You know, so we always run into that issue. Yeah, so if you're running into a financing issue, but you have other contingencies out there, use those other contingencies to get out. Don't wait to the last minute hoping that, oh, we'll just use our financing to get out of the contract, because it's very difficult.
You see sellers ever retaining some of that portion of the proceeds or buyer defaulting on a financing contingency?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes more of a convenient, you know, it's, you know, buyer's got a big deposit and, you know, they know to get their deposit out, you know, they can either go and sue the seller, they can go mediation, arbitration, you know, it's going to cost them money. It becomes a financial decision that sometimes we see some negotiations go on there. And it depends on how egregious the you know, the violation is. You know, they really should have known this. This is something that should have been done at application time. A credit, you know, something in the credit report that was old, that should have been caught, as opposed to something that just came up, you know, very, very late in the game. So sometimes that's a judgment call, but it's really hard. And what we see a lot of times is the listings agents wind up siding with their seller. You know, the seller's mad at the buyer, right? And the listing agent probably wants to give them the right advice, which is just give the people back their deposit. But the seller's mad. And the person they're probably mad at is their agent, because that's the only person they can yell at that point. So I see a lot of listing agents kind of put their arm around their seller and like, damn that buyer, let's get their deposit. Let's make things right in the world. But, and sometimes it's, again, it usually takes about 7 days to get a deposit released on financing. Because I was talking about this, like 7 days of under contract. And before you sign that next contract, definitely get it released. Get that release signed and give them back their deposit. Just be done with it. Because what you'd hate to be in a situation where the buyers do decide to come legally after the seller for not releasing the deposit in a timely fashion, and then screws up the next sale, right? And then the leverage is flip-flop. So, those are things kind of we help you. And again, if you run into one of these situations, please let us know. We can help you massage through it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a judgment call. Yeah. But I'd say it usually takes about a week to get it released. Cooler heads prevail. The emotion kind of subsides. The other thing is we've run into some situations where people are, home inspection's done. We're waiting to get the HOA docs. Buyer finds another house. Something happens. Buyer wants to get out of the contract. We don't have the HOA docs yet. So agent sends the release over saying, hey, we haven't gotten the HOA docs. We're backing out of the contract. Don't do that. So we've had a situation where, in a sense, what you've done before you've gotten the HOA docs, and you're trying to cancel the contract, you really haven't had your review period. So you really don't have the right to cancel the contract. So what I would recommend is, and what most of us want to do is, buyer wants to move on. Best thing to do is get the seller to get their house back on the market and give them back, is give the listing agent a call and have a discussion with them. Just say, hey, look, here's what's going on. I don't think these buyers are going to buy the home. Send us a release. Initiate the release to us. And they're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? We're going to keep you in this contract. Then what you say, next line is, then send us the HOA docs. And then at that point they go, oh, okay, gotcha. All right. And they'll usually, but you want them to initiate the release, not you. Because once you initiate that release, potentially you violated the contract. You're voiding a contract that you don't have the right to void at that point. Because you don't have the docs. And granted, once you pass that 20-day HOA period, after 20 days after ratification, they should get you the documents. The Maryland Homeowner Association Act doesn't say what happens if they haven't. It's assumed that it's voidable by the buyer, but I would have that conversation first with that agent. Make sense?
That happened. That happened to me. Betty and I. And they never got the HOA docs in the time frame it came and went, and they hadn't signed a release. But because I hadn't gotten the HOA docs, we voided it. The event
seller's
He was-
father.
Well, oh my gosh.
Oh, and he was a Churchill. But he didn't
It says at the top, only you
Yeah, you can use it. They're not. We share a couple documents with them. Yeah. I don't. And then MAR has like a mutual release and a unilateral release. Yeah, and those create their own issues. And that's the reason I always want to have it all. Do we have agreement or not agreement on this release? And it makes it really clear on this. We do not have agreement or we do have agreement. And that's why I like this form a lot better.
So it's okay to use this in any county?
Yeah. It just depends on if the other agent, their compliance department might reject it. Okay, the next page is the inspection contingency. So this has changed pretty dramatically. There used to be 2 inspections, right? We had our